Hello everyone, Allyane here. It has come to my attention that quite a few people have been using one of my dated guides from Overzone on how to deal with Stormbringer challenge mode, and as a result they're using a little bit of an out-of-date and not so accurate guide, which made me think I should probably make one slightly more updated for the current meta Nikkes and try to, help you guys out on how to clear the newer version with especially the amazing amount of extra tools we have to our arsenal and a little bit of extra knowledge that comes from the experience of playing for longer than half a year now. So without further ado, let us begin. So, Stormbringer will always start with 2 hits of Gatling Gun, which he will do almost immediately. Then he will follow by a QT that will go around him. One is a white circle you shouldn't hit, the other one is a red circle you should interrupt. Afterwards, he's going to do his Gatling Gun twice again, targeting your Nikkes, and afterwards he will start doing a laser from left to right, starting from your position 1, then for 2, then 3, then 4, and then 5. Once he has done those lasers, he will immediately follow up again with a Thunderclap, which is the lightning that smites your Nikkes from the heavens. Afterwards, he will do again 2 Gatling Guns into interrupt circles, repeating the previous pattern that we just established. Once he transitions, however, he will break his shields, do 3 times the Gatling Gun, and once he has hit your Nikkes 3 times the Gatling Guns, he will do what I call a trailing QT, where you have to follow the red circles along a trail to interrupt a very dangerous ability that he has. Now, once you have done that, he will immediately go into an additional QT that, if you fail, it's not the end of the world. It will always do the little missiles that you can technically iframe. The QT you should absolutely not fail, though, is the transition one that will stun all of your Nikkes. Now, after that QTE pattern is completely done, he will immediately start doing his lasers, this time around from right to left. And once he is done with those laser beams, he will go into a tornado that will do AoE to all of your Nikkes. And after that, he will repeat everything. So, team composition-wise, we have way more tools in our arsenal as we did back then, so we can use all of the notorious duos and some of the very powerful supports if you happen to have them. So, for example, Negatia is a great example. Crown, the newly added Nikke, is also amazing at dealing with Stormbringer due to the damage increases that she brings. The Bunny Girls, you can cheese the damage from Stormbringer, bringing a Taunter and giving it Indomitable through Blanc, or you could heal back up through Blanc and then just do a lot of damage thanks to her damage amplification, nor being just there to increase the ammunition and bring a little bit of support. Another option as well, technically, is Helm Aquamarine. Helm Aquamarine will debuff and damage amp and also bring cooldown reduction, which means that you can bring, for example, other B1s to be able to pair with her. Now, in terms of tactics that you can use, of course, if you have any of the cooldown reduction Nikkes, especially on the burst 1 slot, you can absolutely use them. These being the main ones, unless you're using Crown Privity, for example, in which case you could even bring something like a Dorothy Crown and then Privity, because everyone has Privity, so that is an actual advantage if you happen to have these 3. You could add these and then try to DPS out the boss before he kills you. That is assuming that you have the damage to do so. Now, one of the things that you could do as well is cheese the boss through various tactics. So Jackal brings damage distribution, which is very good for surviving certain parts of the damage, thanks to the damage sharing that she provides. You could also use Tia, of course, by timing the shields to reduce the damage. And also, if needed be, you could just taunt the Thunderclap away, because all of the Thunderclap hits can actually be taunted by a single Nikke. Same with Noise. You could even do the cheese that I mentioned earlier with Blanc and Noise, so that you time her HP being slightly lower, and then you have Blanc apply her Indomitable so that she doesn't die. Another option in terms of cheesing, of course, is to bring something like a Rapunzel, so that you have consistent healing, and if needed be, if a Nikke dies, you can resurrect her. You could even, in theory, bring a Taunter and just have her taunt and take damage out. like a champ and then get back up by Rapunzel if needed be. So you could bring the fucking Diesel, or you could even bring, in theory, these are like very extreme circumstances, or you could bring even a Nero. These are like very extreme circumstances if you have the damage to compensate it and you are in dire need of survivability. Now, in terms of other B2s that you could bring, of course, Novel. She has very much fallen out of the meta when it comes to the higher end, but she still will serve you here if you have a built Novel, as she brings the damage amp and she is iron-coated as well. Other options, if you happen to have the limited, of course, Rem could be good if you have her invested, and as I said, Summer Helm if you happen to have her. Other limiteds that you could even bring, for example, would be the very infamous Biscuit SNS Privity composition, where you just do a lot of damage through Biscuit, heal back up through her leech, and then just generally survive. In this case, you could even bring something like a Noah to have extra survivability, or you could bring a Polly, or you could bring something to increase that survivability. And then on the B1 slot, you would put something like a Doro. Or if you don't have Dorothy, but you do happen to have something that brings cooldown reduction, such as a Dola, you could place a Dola in the comp and then just bring something like a Pepper to heal back up. Other standout possibilities are, of course, using Indomitable or Biscuit as well. So you could, for example, bring Biscuit, and then you could bring a Taunter. For example, you could bring a B1 Taunter, so that they soak the damage. Hopefully, they don't take over 50% of the damage before they soak twice, so that they take that damage away from the rest of the team. And for example, Ludmilla could, in theory, bring away the damage when it comes to dealing with the Thunderclap itself. Of course, in theory, you could also bring Moran, but I am not a huge believer of Moran. Now, in terms of B3s, you have a lot of very potent damage dealers compared to what we used to have in the past. So, of course, you can still bring Alice, you can still bring Maxwell from the past, you can still bring Snow White from the past, but now we also have access to Red Hood, we have access to Scarlet Black Shadow. Like I said, we have access to Summer Anis. We used to have access to Moderna, so she's still a very good option here as well. And the idea would be to bring a lot of these more meta Nikkes to push the damage and try to kill it. Now, if you don't happen to have these Nikkes or a Winter Ludmilla, you could always bring some other Nikkes that you might have invested, such as Laplace, or you could cope with something like Snow White Innocent Days. It's going to be significantly harder, but it is technically doable. Now, you could also bring aggressive healing. This still kind of works, but since we have significantly more options now in terms of damage dealing and so on, bringing things like Helm for Leech are still good, but not as preferable. However, there is one exception to this, and that is Marciana, who provides a massive amount of healing for very little downside. So you could bring, for example, Marciana if you happen to be running, especially if you happen to be running something like Last Bullet Nikke compositions. She will be incredibly good because Privity will proc her leech quite a bit. So you could bring Drake, for example, as well. A decent-ish option when it comes to bringing a little bit of buff and filling up some of those slots, especially off burst. And after that, shotguns are not very good. Technically, Mate Privity is the exception in that regard, but shotguns are... Mate Privity and Noir are kind of the exceptions in that regard. Shotguns such as Sugar and the like are not very good. I wouldn't recommend bringing Soline either in this case because she's going to be impossible to keep topped off. And yeah, that will about cover the standout Nikkes, possible combinations, and some of the cheeses you could use. And with this, we should have covered just about everything when it comes to Stormbringer and the challenge mode. Hope this will help you, and happy hunting.